Okay, good morning, everyone. It's 9:01. I'm still waiting to see if we get some more TAC members joining. Right now, I've got Petaluma, Santa Rosa, Roanoke Park, North Marin. Katati. Let's just wait one more minute, then we'll get started. Okay, it's 9:03. I think we have at least a quorum. So welcome everyone to our virtual meeting. And we're going to be following the agenda that was sent out by Easter last week. A couple protocols, again, just to remind everybody when we do roll call, to state your full name and the agency that you are with. And then be sure to mute your phones and microphones when you're not speaking. And with that, Easter, you want to go ahead and do a roll call?
Yes. City of Katati.
Craig Scott.
City of Petaluma.
Hi, this is Kent Carruthers.
City of Roanoke Park.
This is Mary Grace Possum.
City of Santa Rosa.
Good morning, this is Jennifer Burke.
City of Sonoma. North Marin Water District.
Drew McIntyre's here.
Town of Windsor. Valley of the Moon Water District. And Marin Municipal Water District. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Easter. So we do have 1, 2, 3, 4. We do have 5 of the 8 TAC agencies representing here. So we do have a quorum. So we'll go ahead and continue. First thing is TAC chair. I just want to open up this meeting for any public comment for items that are not on the agenda. If there's anybody from the public that does wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via the telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. And then I'll just pause here for a second to see if Easter or Gina see any comments or requests for comments from the public.
There are no members of the public with their hand raised for public comment today.
Thanks, Gina. And I have nothing on my phone for public comment for an item that's not on the agenda. So that means that we're going to move on to agenda item number 3. And the first item in 3 is just our regular update on 2020 water production relative to the 2013 benchmark year. So there was an attachment that was sent out to everybody that shows our conservation tracking for the partnership. And again, similar to what we typically show, we have the first table. Table 1 is the most recent recording for one individual month. And then more representative really is year to date for multiple months, which is table 2. And that's what I like to focus on. You can see here in table 2 that the partners' water savings in this year to date through May is 16% below the state's 2013 benchmark year that we typically use as a reporting metric. And one of the things, which is good, and one of the things that I want to mention to the group here is that, TAC leadership recently, along with Sonoma County Water Agency Water Conservation staff, had been talking about how to continue messaging that, the water contractors have done a lot more than just saving water since the 2013 state benchmark year that was used prior to the most recent drought period. And this is illustrated in the second attachment. It's called chart 2. And this has been shown periodically in the annual report from the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership. It's been modified a little bit, but again, if you look at that, it looks, as I mentioned before, water use is down 13% from the 2013 year, but water use is down significantly over a much longer period, going back to 25 years, essentially back to 1995. So you can see that I guess the point that we're trying to make is to not get too fixated on the 2013 benchmark year, but just look at all the progress that's been made by the water contractors for decades now. And you can see that in this chart, and you can see that it's been a significant decrease in the water use. And on there, you'll see a faint line that shows that this occurred even when population was increasing. So we'll continue to show this chart. I think it's important to look at a much longer window than just looking at 2013 to present, but to go back even earlier to tell the story of the success that the water contractors have done. Any questions? Any questions on that from the TAC? Any questions from the public on this item, on item 3A, just water production that we just discussed? Again, if you wish to make a comment via Zoom, if you can raise your hand and Gina will look for that, or if you're dialing in on the phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. So I'll just pause for a minute to give Gina a chance to look.
We do have one public comment for this item, John McInhill, and I am going to enable your mic. And you can now unmute your mic.
Thank you, Gina. Don McInhill, and I'd like to applaud the progress on water conservation over time. However, I'm curious, we've had about 55% of normal rainfall this year. We've got a crisis at Lake Mendocino, and just curious what we're doing this year to respond to this drought condition we're experiencing as far as water conservation. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I know that each individual water contractor is doing something on their own, and so I can, but there's also a common message through the partnership. So I'll have Paul Piazza speak to that in a minute. But I can tell you, just from North Marin Water District, we have a summer, essentially a spring water line. It's a newsletter that goes out to all of our customers. We have about 20,000 customers, and it's a direct mailing. And in that water line, in that newsletter, the very first page is primarily a report with an update from me, the general manager, on water supply conditions. And a lot of that is related to the current conditions up along the Russian River and north, and the call for the need for additional conservation and water use, using water efficiently. And so that message is being made at the local level within our district, and it's also being made within all the partnerships on a regional level. And Paul, you want to talk a little bit about our summer outreach campaign?
Good morning, Drew. Thank you. Happy to talk about that. Good morning, Dawn. The summer campaign is in full swing. It features a variety of different media approaches, some of which are the traditional still ads that appear in print, in the PD and other publications. Those typically are showing up in the Sunday edition of the paper. But more importantly, we have a digital media campaign that we've bought into, as well as broadcast radio. The digital campaigns feature a variety of different ad placements across kind of the top 100 websites that people visit. They tend to congregate those on news aggregator sites. And we're purchasing roughly 150,000 impressions per month over the course of the 4-month campaign. In the month of June, that also included video to reach customers during the early part of the irrigation season, to make them aware of the need to address any system tune-ups that are required for their irrigation system, to identify leaks and make those repairs. And then a separate video to speak towards correct watering times. So to get people to recognize that watering during the middle of the day is not efficient, and to set their timers to finish irrigation before sunup or in the late evening hours when wind is not as much of an issue. Those videos reached an additional 35,000 people, mostly through what is referred to as connected TV, where people are literally watching video programming on their devices. We're seeing about 80% of the digital impressions are reaching mobile devices. The remainder are split up between people that are using desktop computers and other devices. The broadcast media features 3 different 30-second spots. We did a number of placements on a variety of radio stations to reach both Spanish and English-speaking listeners. That includes K-Hits 104.9, Froggy, which is a country station locally, The River, which is classic hits, The Crush, Wine Country Radio, Exitos, and a few others. And then we also did an underwriting radio announcement on the Spanish public broadcasting station KBBF, which is 89.1. So those are going to continue throughout the summer months. In addition, we're continuing to support, to the extent we are able, those programs that reach directly our customers. So we have been providing home water use assessments as a part of our regular summer campaign. Those were put on hold because of the shelter-in-place order, and we're working to put in solutions to be able for our customers to self-assess on the indoor portion. And then we just recently started offering actual site visits for irrigation assessments. A few of those have been completed, but we're relying on the customer's comfort level for our staff to be able to do those. Nonetheless, we're hoping that those will pick back up. Some of our other summer outreach campaigns, where we partner with the Sonoma County Master Gardeners Garden Sense Consultants, has also been on hold due to the shelter order. The consultants that provide the in-home consultations are in a very vulnerable demographic typically, and there's been some pushback on their part to be able to continue to offer site visits. So similarly, the summer approach is to put a virtual garden assessment in place. And the coordinator of the Garden Sense program has done a great job of putting together with a few of the consultants the ability to have on-phone consultations to help people address their gardening questions and also to help them transition their high water use gardens or turf areas to low water use. We continue to support our partners on their rebate programs, both indoor and outdoor, and to make sure people understand that this summer's lower waterfall or rainfall year is going to have an effect on the river, and that all their efforts to save water are going to the betterment of the ecosystems in the river and to maintaining flows. So that's what I have, Drew. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Paul. Any other water contractors want to comment just what they're doing locally above and beyond just the partnerships summer ag campaign? I see a hand with Jennifer. There we go.
Hi, Drew. It's Jennifer Burke with Santa Rosa. Just to follow up a couple things, if at all helpful, we have developed virtual options for doing our home audits. So working with our customers to be able to provide materials, drop them off, and then doing outdoor portions of the audits in a safe manner. We're happy to share that with anyone else who might be interested in what we've been able to put together. And then we have also recently just improved our Cash for Grass rebate or green exchange program. We've increased the rebate amount to try and encourage more folks to participate at this time. We feel like with folks being home and looking at what's going on around their yard, this is a great time for them not only to focus on fixing leaks and making improvements, but also is a great time to consider transitioning their yard over and removing high water use or turf and replacing it with low water use alternatives. So those are just a few things that we're also doing in Santa Rosa to try and help really encourage folks to use water as wisely as possible this summer.
Thanks, Jennifer. Any other comments from the TAC? Just follow up from Dawn's question. Okay, any other comments from the public on this item? Again, we're on item 3A. Again, if you have any comments, please raise your hand in Zoom or hit press *9 on your phone. I'll give a brief pause here for Gina, if you can let me know if there are any other questions from the public on this item.
I do not have any raised hands for this agenda item.
Thank you, Gina. Okay, so now we're going to move to item 3B, Summer Ad Campaign. So Paul's already given his update on the ad campaign. Paul, am I correct to assume that you have nothing else to add on your summary?
That pretty much covered it, Drew, in the response to Dawn McInhill's question about what we were up to.
Okay, great. Any questions from the TAC on Paul's presentation on the summer ad campaign? I don't see any questions from the TAC. Now I'll move to the public. Again, asking for any questions on Paul's summary of the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership summer ad campaign. Again, if you want to raise your hand, please do so on Zoom or hit *9 on your phone, and I will pause briefly to allow that time to happen and Gina to report out.
I have no hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you, Gina. Okay, so now we're going to move to agenda item 3C, which is an update on the 2018 water conservation legislation. And Paul was kind enough to kind of put together in our agenda a recap of what's been happening of late with the different work groups. And Paul, you don't really need to go through every single element here in your memo, but I would like you to just kind of hit some of the highlights of near-term activities related to the different working groups. And again, appreciate you putting this together for all of us as a current snapshot.
Thank you, Drew. In terms of high spots, it looks like the state is going to be moving forward to recommend to the legislature that wholesale water providers also be required to report annually on their water loss to DWR. There's going to need to be some adjustments made to the reporting mechanism for that, given the retailers are currently utilizing a spreadsheet tool that AWWA has developed for water loss that is really more akin to the needs of retailers, doesn't quite fit the mold for water wholesalers who don't have direct metered customers. So they're going to be moving forward at some point with additional legislation to take the steps necessary for determining what that will look like for wholesalers going forward. There was an update just recently on the water use studies working group. So there is a meeting scheduled for July 23rd, as is indicated in the memo. So it'll be interesting. That'll be the second meeting to see next steps for developing the information for the residential baseline. The annual water supply and demand assessment, as we move forward with the collaboration between the wholesale Sonoma Water Urban Water Management Plan effort and the retail Urban Water Management Plan effort, hoping to have a discussion on the methodology and steps that will be needed to take to provide these annual water supply and demand assessments. DWR has asked for voluntary reporting of the water supply shortage reports, July of 2021, to help inform that methodology for them and for retailers to get a little practice in before the actual mandatory first due date of July 1, 2022. So looking forward to that collaboration with the retailers. There was a recent working group meeting of the Landscape Area Measurement Group to look at some of the consultant work to classify residential parcels irrigable areas. That work will be used to create water budgets for outdoor, for residential parcels, for retailers, as part of the target setting process for the statewide framework. Essentially, there's regional participants in the pilot that DWR is working on right now that reported out on what they were seeing from these parcel classifications, just to report on what they saw as potential errors or concerns. And then that provided the ability of the consultant to kind of talk about the method that they would be following to address some of those concerns. DWR did bring up the need for retail agencies that haven't responded to DWR's request to verify their service area boundaries, that needs to happen. So if you haven't had that engagement yet with DWR, they're recommending you reach out soon. One of the items that was brought up in that working group meeting was some of the erroneous data that was being reported on for parcels that are resident, well, that are actually commercial or other based on their land use code, but have been turned into somewhat of a residential service. So for example, there may have been a parcel that was classified commercial that is currently serving more of a multifamily use purpose. And consequently, from a customer account standpoint, a retailer may consider it residential, but DWR, their consultants using the land use codes to identify residential parcels may see it as something other. So DWR is just advising that retail water suppliers take a look at their customer account data and to reconcile their customer data with county land use codes to ensure that there isn't a significant number of parcels that may be serving residential purposes, but is falling under a separate land use code. And the fact that those parcels would not be included in the analysis that DWR is doing for the irrigable measurements. Aside from that, there's a couple public rulemaking updates. The urban retailer water law standards are moving forward. They had a second public stakeholder meeting in May to take a look at their revised economic model for water loss. There are still some concerns from the retailers about the use of that economic model. It's a bit of a black box, and there was some deep dives that happened to try and get at some of the assumptions behind how that economic model is going to be working. Consequently, a coalition letter was put together to address some of the concerns around the second iteration of the water loss standards going forward. So that comment letter is available on CalWEP's website or through Aqua. If you're not seeing that, let us know and we can help get a link out to that. And then just to highlight that the state Water Board did adopt at their April 21st meeting, the mandatory monthly conservation reporting requirement. So that will go into effect in October. That's it for now, Drew.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions from the TAC on Paul's report? Paul, I do have a question. The release of the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan Guidebook is planned for fall of 2020. Is that, you think that's realistic?
I haven't heard any updates, Drew, on the timing of that. It's not unreal. It's not unusual for them to be a little bit behind on the release of the guidebook, but that's their timetable that they're sticking with today.
Does anybody else from the TAC have any other more recent information on just, how they're doing as far as timing for a fall release? Because I know some of the TAC members are also participating in these individual working groups. So just curious there. And then second, my other question, Paul, is on the monthly conservation reporting. Do you anticipate that the process will change and the format will change? A lot of us continue to report online right now, even though it's not mandatory. Is that going to be a similar website reporting protocol, or do you anticipate that will change? Do you have any idea?
No, it's still going forward through the use of the Drink site. There's been some discussion about some format changes. I know there was some pushback on the use of the residential GPCD metric. So there's a slight change up to that in the report, but essentially they're still collecting the information as before. They did extend the reporting deadline on a monthly basis to the 28th. It was previously by the 15th of each month, so they do have a little bit more of a grace period, recognizing that some of the billing data does take a little while to reconcile for retailers. So that was a welcome change, but not a lot different than what people have been reporting on previously, Drew.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Before I open it up for public comment, any other questions from the TAC? Yes, Jennifer.
Sure, this is Jennifer Burke. It looks like Colin Close with Santa Rosa has some additional information that he can share on some of the working groups. So if we can enable him to speak, he should be able to give an update.
Okay, great.
Terrific. Thank you, Director Burke. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Colin.
Terrific. So I've been participating in the Urban Water Management Guidebook work group, and it looks like late November is the target to get that out. In addition, they have put out a first draft of many of the chapters and a second draft of about, I think it's 3 or 4 of them. They also have some appendices they need to work on, including the one for the annual assessment for comparing demand versus supply for this year and one dry year. That'll be an exercise we do every year. So they're working on an appendix that will have more specific suggestions. Will be a little less prescriptive than some of the other pieces. So they have put out drafts for almost all of the chapters, as I said, and so we've had a chance to read those, provide some questions and comments, and workshop them, and they are moving forward. So I don't expect it before November, but they do appear to be working very hard and taking in comments and questions and clarifications from the work group. Very, very robust integration of that input. Seems like they're very open to it and to making sure this is as useful as possible.
Okay, great. Thanks for that input, Colin. Any follow-up questions from the TAC on Colin's update? Okay, let's move to the public on this item. Again, if you have any comments you'd like to make, please raise your hand using the Zoom command. And then also, if you're participating via telephone, you can dial the *9. And I'll pause briefly and allow that to take place and a report out from Gina.
There are no hands raised for this item.
Thank you, Gina. Okay, just following the agenda now, we're going to move to agenda item number 4, water supply conditions and temporary urgency change order. And Pam Jean, I believe, is going to start on this. And I don't know if Don's going to also add it, or if Pam, you're going to take the whole enchilada.
Yeah, well, I thought Dawn was going to do this, but I don't see him on the call, or on the meeting. So I'll do it. So in terms of water supply conditions, I think everybody knows, hopefully, that we're in a dry year classification according to our water rights permits. Lake Mendocino is almost 59,000 acre feet right now. We are discharging about almost 170 CFS from the reservoir, and it's about 54% storage level. Lake Sonoma is almost 202,000 acre feet with an outflow of just over 110 CFS and about 82% in storage. We have been making a ton of changes in terms of release changes up at the reservoirs to try to balance things. The control point in the upper river, which is the lowest flow point, moved really rapidly this year downstream. I mean, happened over, it seemed like just a day or two. And so we finally got some things balanced out, but we're still working on managing those releases, minimizing them as much as we can to preserve storage because it has been such a dry year. So we originally were not going to be filing a temporary urgency change petition this year, petitions plural, but then a change in operation for the Potter Valley project occurred. It was approved by FERC back in, I'm trying to remember, the April timeframe, May timeframe. And so our projections showed that we were going to have issues with storage, especially at Lake Mendocino, if we operated under dry year conditions and had sort of what I would reference as sort of historical demand on the river. So we did file petitions with the State Water Board in June, and we have had contact with State Water Board staff. We know that they are working on an order for us. But we have not seen that order yet. I think we expect to see that order hopefully this week or early next week. Originally, we thought we might have it as early as last week, but that's not turning out to be the case. So the order requests a change in flow in the upper river what's currently required under our water rights permits is a minimum flow of 75 cubic feet per second in the upper river. And our request was to reduce that to 50 cubic feet per second. In the lower river, our current requirement is 85 cubic feet per second, and we requested in our petitions 60 cubic feet per second. So there's, that's pretty significant, but at the same time, when we look at the potential of having another dry year next year, and also just looking at the minimum storage level in Lake Mendocino going into this fall, we felt that it was prudent to request those. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else at this point, Drew. I guess I'll just answer some questions if there are any.
Thanks, Pam. Questions from the TAC? Pam, I have a couple questions. Can you provide any recent communication with the state on when the agency should expect to receive something?
Yeah, we're hoping for, let me think about this. We spoke with them last week and they said 7 to 10 days. So maybe this week, but I think more likely early next week, we should see something from the state. We've had a turnover in staff at the State Water Board and the Division of Water Rights. So we are trying to work with staff who's not completely familiar with our system. We've spent a bit of time on the phone with them, walking them through how the system works and such. But it's taking them a little bit of time to get up to speed, as well as they also had some work that they had to do that had statutory deadlines associated with it that was ahead of ours. So we know that they're working on it, and I don't know if Jay's on the call, but he had a conversation with someone over there last week, which I think just more or less indicated that they're working on it and trying to figure out how to deal with folks other than us in the watershed. They can deal with us through this order, but there's also, a lot of other water users in the watershed that they're trying to figure out if they want to try to address those folks that have water rights other than us also, since it's such a dry year.
Okay, thanks, Pam. One other question before I open it up to the public. Did I hear you correctly that you said that current releases from Lake Mendocino are 170 CFS?
Okay. Yes, right around 170. Just not.
And are you saying that in a dry year at this point in time they should be 75 CFS? And
no. So the release is 170. The minimum flow point or location right now is at Healdsburg. So we're releasing 170 up the reservoir. What we're seeing at Healdsburg actually today is about 80. So there's about 90 cubic feet per second that is being used between, some of it's going to groundwater, some of it's going to environmental uses like trees and plants and such. Some of it's being used by ag, some of it's being used by communities along the river on the way down. So that's the difference between what we're releasing and what we're seeing in Healdsburg is about 90 cubic feet per second.
And the last year that that the agency had a similar request for these reduced flows, was that in 2013 or 2014?
I know we had 2 requests in 2014, so I'm guessing it was 2014.
Okay. And then are the demands, the drop that you're seeing from the actual release from Lake Mendocino until it gets to Healdsburg, is that pretty similar to what you've seen before during these similar periods?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's what we normally see. Not that it couldn't be improved, but I think it is pretty normal.
Okay. And then any final questions from the TAC before I open it up to the public? Okay, we're going to open up to the public again. If you can indicate that you click raise your hand if you're in the Zoom, or dial *9 if you're participating on your phone. And I'm getting a little bit better on this. Actually, I can tell that there's some person that's raised their hand. So, Gina, you see anybody in front of the public that would like to make a comment?
Yes, we have Don McInhill, so I'm going to unmute your speaking abilities.
Thank you again, Gina, and thank you, Drew. Pam, really appreciate the update on what's happening with the state board and where the system is as far as releases from Lake Mendocino. Certainly, we've already let the state board Division of Water Rights staff know that legally they really need to issue a separate order in addition to responding to the water agency or the Sonoma Water petition to restrain water use in the upper Russian River. Legally, they cannot continue to use cutting flows as the only way to meet these shortages. So I would love to see anyone in the contractor community join us to encourage the State Water Board to exercise their discretion under the California Water Code to compel everyone upstream of Dry Creek to enact mandatory conservation, principally agriculture, which is a very heavy political lift. So really appreciate any support we can get, because I hate to, everyone wants to blame the water agency for all these things, and really, you're kind of on the side, not in the middle of this. And I take pains to point out that it's really the state board's discretion that is not being exercised to protect some of the recreational other uses of the river in the summer. So love to see some folks join us in encouraging the water board to exercise their authority and have a separate action to partner the TUC petition to enact some level of conservation in the upper basin. Thank you so much.
So Don, can I ask, what specifically did you ask the State Water Board to do? I assume it wasn't as general as exercise your authority. What was it you requested?
We're asking them to institute mandatory 25% conservation, actually cut off riparian diverters and completely curtail these folks who are taking water, which is not natural flow. I mean, you touch on percolation of groundwater as some of the system losses. We all know where that's going. It's not going to groundwater. It's refilling cones of depressions from our agricultural pumps. So, that's something that we were thinking about taking action in 2014, but I'm afraid before things sort out in Potter Valley, we're going to be in this situation many times in the future. And the water board needs to get in the habit of reducing water use. I mean, cutting flows is one tool, reducing demand is the other. And it's a heavy political lift for them. The governors have clearly stepped down on the side of agriculture getting all the water they want. Well, that's contrary to state law, so federal law as well. So, I think it's time for them to do their job and, spread out the pain. There's no question we need to conserve that water. It's how we do it. So at this point, we haven't put a specific request in between besides suggesting 25%. We're waiting for their final noticing to come out because they're just all these little details. So, and we will share that with everyone, I'm sure. But it looks like 25%. We might ask for more once we run the numbers and see what their public notice comes out.
Okay, thanks, Don. I appreciate the explanation.
Yeah, thank you, Don, for your comments. Anybody else from the public that would like to make a comment on this item?
Drew, we do have David Keller. I'm going to go ahead and unmute your mic.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Pam, for the report. Appreciate it. And thanks, Don, for your comments. And in request to the state board to institute mandatory conservation, they've never instituted it above Lake Mendocino, particularly the East Branch Russian. I know Potter Valley Irrigation District has been very diligent in reducing their demands on flows coming through the Potter Valley project. However, the state has never issued orders for conservation on the rest of the East Branch Russian. And that, of course, will reflect on inflows to Lake Mendocino. The rationale from the state board was it's above anadromy, and that was a major oversight last time around. So Don, if you would also mention in your letter East Branch, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Any other questions from the public on this item? Again, you can click raise hand on Zoom or dial *9 if you're participating by phone.
I see no other hands, Drew.
Thanks, Gina. Just going back to the TAC, was anybody, I don't know, is there anybody that can kind of give an update on what might have happened recently with any Upper Russian River managers meeting? Grant, I see you're there. Has there been something that's recent meeting at all?
No, we held our last meeting, pretty quick meeting. Given the current state of affairs, Don and Pam gave an update on the TUCP and what we were expecting. They also ran through current status of the Potter Valley project. It really was not, Pam, do you recall anything there that should be reported out?
I think everything that is pertinent to this group is on your agenda, Drew. So.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on now to item number 5. Pam, don't go anywhere. It's a biological opinion update. And so I assume you're going to handle this one as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to do this. And I'm going to, my dog hasn't barked for about 10 minutes, so he's likely to bark while I'm doing this. Just give you a heads up and a warning. I may get up and shut the door.
Okay.
He's a barker and he's not good on conference calls. So anyways, biological opinion update for July. Hopefully everybody got the handout. It's got a couple really nice photos on the back side of the first page. So hopefully people can see that. The fish flow project, the work just continues to go on. One of the things that is really being worked on right now, and it's not mentioned in here, I apologize, is a lot of work on the water quality model and getting that sort of updated at this point. And hopefully they're trying to schedule some, of course, virtual meetings with the resource agencies, namely the Regional Water Board, so that they can talk through how the changes that are being made address their comments on the original draft environmental impact report. So there's a lot of work being done in terms of modeling both water quality as well as flow modeling. So that is going on. It's kind of buried in here, but just want to make sure people know that. The vast majority of those staff that are working on that are working remotely, but being able to do their work that way. So it's not been a problem. The next item on the update is the Dry Creek Habitat Enhancement Project. We do have some construction that's supposed to start this month for the last remaining piece of phase 3, which is the 3rd mile on Dry Creek. That project was awarded to Hanford, I think in June. Yeah, in June. And Hanford has been out there before on other projects. So we really are glad to get them back. They do a good job for us. All the right-of-way agreements and permits are in place so that they'll be ready to do that. They're also going to do some maintenance work on some of the prior completed projects to deal with some sediment accumulation that they've had in those particular areas. So that'll also happen this summer. And then as far as the work with the Army Corps of Engineers, we do continue to work forward on phases 4 through 6. I think this has already been reported out, but there was quite a bit of funding that was, well, 100% of the Corps' funding for their portion of the projects was included in their 2020 work plan, which is just kind of really awesome. So we're really happy about that. And we expect those projects to be under construction in 2021, 2022, and 2023, the 3 phases, 4, 5, and 6. The design on those projects has already been past the 90% review, and we expect to get the 99% design packages later this month. So that's pretty exciting. I think that's it for that. As far as fish monitoring goes, right now, what they're spending most of their time on is doing some snorkel surveys. There's a nice little description in the update here of how that occurs. But they're focusing on juvenile salmon and steelhead, looking for what kind of habitat they're occupying. And along with that, they can also check to see what flows are in the streams that they're looking for these fish in. So they not only are looking at numbers of fish, they're looking at where they're hanging out, as well as what the conditions look like in those habitats. So so that they can figure out, what's optimal for survival for these fish. So that work's going on right now. The Russian River Estuary Management Project, we are in the management season right now. It began on May 15th. It runs through October 15th. We have a new adaptive management plan this year. It was updated pretty significantly, and it was finalized in May. And right now, excuse me, they're doing both biological and water quality monitoring associated with the Estuary Management Project. And they've had to adjust some of the work that they do because of COVID and the need to social distance, but they're getting the work done. Excuse me. And currently the mouth of the river is open. The last item, and I love this photo. It's a fantastic photo.
Yes.
Anyways, in terms of interim flow changes, we've already talked pretty at length about that. So I'll skip that unless there's any questions about that. And I think that's it, Drew.
Yeah, it is a great photo. They're not practicing social distancing.
Yeah, no, they're not.
All right, thanks, Pam. Any questions from the TAC on Pam's report on the biological opinion update?
Jennifer has a question.
Jennifer?
Thanks, Drew. Thanks, Pam, for the update, and appreciate the information on the water quality and flow modeling that's being done on the draft EIR. I was just wondering if you had any update on schedule in terms of when you think the recirculation might be released.
I do not. I apologize. I don't know what that is.
Okay, so I think previously you guys had said end of year. Is that still?
I'm not sure. That is, I think, what we talked about probably a month ago internally, but it's been at least a month since we talked about it. So I'm not sure what it is right now.
Okay, thanks, Pam.
So just related to that, for the WAC meeting in August, it would be good if you could go back and talk to the appropriate people and maybe provide an update on just what the actual anticipated schedule is now.
Okay.
Any other questions from the TAC or Pam on the biological opinion update before we open it up to the public? Pam, I do. A couple questions on the Dry Creek Habitat project. So Hanford is moving forward with the contract this year. Are they the ones that are also going to be doing the maintenance work?
I don't know. Grant, do you know?
Yeah, I think that's what we're doing is taking advantage of them being mobilized. It'll be either our staff or them, but that's the beauty of having them with that contract.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I seem to recall. And then has there been any discussion on a related topic? Has there been any discussion about when to schedule the public policy facilitating committee that was meeting that was postponed? It was supposed to be up in Healdsburg earlier this summer.
I think that was a casualty of the COVID, and we have not rescheduled that yet. I think we'll probably put that on the calendar and talk about it. We generally conduct them. I know we have a XCOM meeting coming up with the team, the colonel, and others, and we'll probably ask that question then about what would be, when we might be able to pull one off.
Okay, thanks, Grant. And then finally, can somebody refresh my memory on where we're at with the inflatable dam, the replacement?
I laugh just because there's a running bet going on right now with Kent Gilfie and several of us. He claims that is the rubber dam bladder has been put on a delivery on a ship coming from China. And so I bet him that I need confirmation of that, basically. But it, as you know, we had one particular bid that came in that our board rejected, partially based off the uncertainty of all the COVID and whether or not we'd get any delivery. And also we think that the estimate, quite frankly, was a bit high. So we're hoping this time around that we'll be able to rebid and get something that's more closer to the engineer's estimate. But I'm still betting that we may not see that in time. So we're looking at probably, we'll just keep our fingers crossed, but we'll probably report more back. We want to do the job. It's important. I am looking at it also with budgets as we go to our board at the end of the month in terms of the type of project that might get postponed and help us get through a tight budget year. So short answer, somehow Kent claims it's on a ship on its way over, but I want confirmation of that.
Well, thanks, Grant. Is the agency actually pre-purchasing the bladder itself and then the contract for bids to install it is separate?
I believe the purchasing of the bladder dam is on us, and a separate contract would go for the installation. And that's why we're really looking at what is it going to take to pull this off, make sure we do it right. It's such an important part of our diversion. And so we want to do it right. That's going to be the priority more than anything else.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move to public comment for this item. Again, this is agenda item number 5, biological opinion status update. And similar protocols, again, if you can raise your hand on the Zoom feature or hit *9 if you're participating by phone. And I'll pause briefly to see if Gina gets any action.
I see no members of the public wishing to speak on item 5.
Okay, thank you, Gina. All right, now we're moving to item number 6, Potter Valley Project relicensing update. Pam, you got some voice left in you?
Yeah, I should have run out and got another glass of water. Yeah, no problem. So I'm trying to think of when we met last. It was May, right? We didn't meet in June.
Yes,
so,
yes.
So I think the last time we met, we were on the verge of filing our feasibility study report, which the planning partners did file. It got filed on May 13th with FERC. There's been, there was a sort of a comment period that went through the end of June associated with that filing, namely to solicit input on the study plans specifically. There were tons and tons of comment letters filed. Very few of those, however, actually addressed the study plans. Just a point of order, just so everybody knows. So there's been lots and lots of letters filed with FERC. Hopefully most of you aren't subscribed to that website or to that particular project like I am, because I just got completely inundated with emails. But the day after we filed the petition, the feasibility study report, we also had a meeting with the Huffman Ad Hoc. And Drew, I see you're going to talk about that.
Yes.
Next. So I won't really speak to that other than to say that that did happen on May 14th. Since May 14th, besides sort of paying attention to what's going on in terms of comment letters, we've been working really hard to get an RFQ or a request for qualifications out and work our way through the process of getting a consultant team hired to work on the ILP process, so to work on the integrated licensing process. So we issued a request for qualifications. I'm trying to remember when it was now, towards, I can't remember. It was in June, in any case. And we received 2 statements qualifications that we are going to move both those teams forward into interviews. Those interviews will happen this week on Wednesday. We'll make a selection. The planning partners will make a selection, and we will then work with the selected team to develop a scope of work and get them on board. So according to our process plan and schedule that we filed with FERC, that FERC sent back a revised version on June 3rd with some minor modifications, but that's essentially the project plan, the schedule that we're working with now. That schedule, the first deliverable to FERC is mid-September, and it is a document that I'm not terribly familiar with these documents, but it says essentially sort of a report out on the first year studies that PG&E completed. And it will also, I think, probably address the comments that we've received in accordance after we filed our feasibility study report, the comments that we received on the project plan, or on the study plan. So we are trying really hard to get a consultant on board so that they have about hopefully a 6-week period to prepare that document and get us started through the integrated licensing process. So the filing of the feasibility study report, I just want to be clear about this, was not a FERC, what one of our outside attorneys refers to as a FERC event. That filing of that feasibility study report is not part of the integrated licensing process. That was a step that we felt we needed to go through as the 2 basin solution partners so that we could sort of all be on the same page and be ready to move forward with the integrated licensing process. So this is really right now is when that integrated licensing process starts, or restarts, as I like to put it, because it was going and now we're restarting it, a year and a half or more after PG&E stopped the process. So this is where folks who are very interested in the project need to make sure that they are registered with FERC to get notifications. They can become an intervener. They can just receive any sort of correspondence that's filed on the project, because the process starting in mid-September is very public and very open, and any stakeholders or interested parties are welcome to participate. There's a lot of things that are going to happen between mid-September and about mid-January 2021, which is the time that, according to our schedule, I forget the gentleman's or the person's title, but the person at FERC will file or approve a final study plan. And then the studies, which is also a very public process, getting through that second year studies will start next year. So that's where we're at in the process. And there's a couple of websites that are very helpful. If you go to the twobasinsolution.org website, you can see that process study plan or process plan and schedule. So you can see all of these events that are supposed to happen according to the integrated licensing process and the dates of those in there. So I highly recommend that anybody who is interested, at least have access to that particular document, because it's very useful for understanding what the process is and where we're at in that process currently.
Thanks, Pam. Mm-hmm. Any questions from the TAC on Pam's update? Okay, let's go to the public to see if the public has any questions on Pam's report. I do see one hand being raised so far.
Yes, that member is David Keller, and I can unmute that.
All right, thank you again, Pam. In terms of our or the partners doing their due diligence on dam safety, an update on that. Division of Safety of Dams is now going to be meeting with FERC to try and get an agreement from PG&E to release data and research and other reports that PG&E has that it has not released to DSOD. Let's just say that the standard issue is that PG&E drags their feet in releasing any dam safety information to DSOD. DSOD is trying to do their first independent review of dam safety, particularly Scott Dam, in 20 years. And at this point, they're in stall mode, waiting for a meeting with FERC to be able to try and persuade PG&E to pony up. And so that's of great concern at DSOD. And I'm wondering what our team is doing in terms of due diligence on dam safety. As DSOD said, they want to sell the dam, PG&E wants to sell the dam, and they will release as little as possible. You're going to have to force it out of them. So I don't know if we have an engineering firm that has yet been retained by the partners to do that evaluation. I don't know if you have any information on that, Pam.
We do not have an engineering firm that's been retained for that purpose, but the project proposal by the Two Basin Solution partners is for removal of that dam.
Right.
So I don't know without, and I apologize, David, because I've never been through one of these processes before. So I've been through the very tail end of the last one where they amended their license, but I've never been through the whole full-blown thing.
Right.
So I don't know if that is going to be one of the studies that gets done or not. I don't think right now we're proposing to do a study with regards to that, because the proposal currently, and this of course could change as the studies are done, but the current proposal is for removal of Scott Dam. So I don't know how to answer that other than what I just said. And it's certainly a discussion that once we have a selected consulting team, we can talk to them about, but I don't know what their recommendation is going to be.
Okay, I appreciate that. One of the reasons to pursue the dam safety issues is that when it comes to compensation to PG&E for doing that work, assuming that they will be required to do that, is going to be the PUC. And my understanding in the number of conversations is that dam safety is a priority, given PG&E's rates are already pretty high. and there's very little room for additional rates, certainly this year, because of their payouts on fire damages. But that when it comes to the PUC, maybe in another 2, 3, 4 years for compensation for removing Scott Dam, my understanding is that the PUC will be much more sensitive to dam safety issues than they will to fisheries issues. And so in that sense, it's important to continue the vein of pursuing dam safety issues. So when it comes to the PUC, a case can be made. This is in addition to fisheries, it's a dam safety issue. And needless to say, PUC at this point is extremely sensitive to safety issues, as is FERC, much more so, unfortunately, than fishery issues. So that's where this would fit into the longer range picture.
Okay, thanks for that explanation.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments from the public on this item? Again, indicate so by pushing the raise hand or dial *9 on your phone.
I do not see any other members of the public for this item.
Okay, thanks, Gina. So the next item is an update on the Huffman Ad Hoc, the most recent Huffman Ad Hoc committee meeting on May 14th. But before doing so, I'd like to go back and acknowledge that there are some water contractors that joined after the roll call. So I'd like to go ahead and just pick up. Is there somebody participating from the city of Sonoma? And if so, if you can announce your name, please. Nobody from the city of Sonoma? How about town of Windsor?
Yes, Sandy Potter here from the town of Windsor.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. And how about Valley of the Moon? Did I see that Alan was participating?
I see Alan on the list, but he's muted.
Gina, can you unmute? There we go.
Yeah, Alan's here.
Okay, thank you, Alan.
Been here the whole time.
All right. And how about from Marin Municipal? Gina, could you unmute Paul Sellier?
Yeah, hi, Drew. This is Paul Sellier, Marin Municipal Water District.
Thanks, Paul. And I have seen Fergie before.
Yes, I did see her on here.
Okay.
Yes, I just joined back in, Drew. I had to pop off for another meeting and I left the TAC. Now I'm at the TAC Ad Hoc, right?
Okay. Thank you. No, we're still doing our TAC meeting.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to item number 7. Again, it's the update of the May 14th Huffman Ad Hoc meeting. That was a virtual meeting. I'm going to just hit some of the highlights from that meeting. The bulk of the meeting was a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation from the planning representatives from each of the planning agreement partners. Doing tag teams. Pam was one of them, just essentially with slides going through the whole process leading up to the submission on May 13th of the feasibility study report. And that, if you're interested in that PowerPoint presentation, it is saved and available to look at the Huffman Ad Hoc website, which is, I believe it's pottervalleyproject.org. Is that correct, Pam? I see you shaking your heads. Yes, pottervalleyproject.org. So you can see that PowerPoint presentation on that website if you're interested in it. After the planning agreement partners gave the presentation, it was opened up for comments from the stakeholders in general. A lot of the stakeholders commented on, supporting the work that had been done to date and the submission of the documents. some of the stakeholders were advocating for an expansion of the planning agreement partners group. Right now, recall there's a total of 5. And some of the comments were related to, how to moving forward, an interest in expanding that group in terms of the members. There was also some interest expressed in releasing the work that had been done on the technical memorandums that provided the background information that led to the feasibility study filing and the information that was in that 20-page document. There was a lot of discussion about the role of PG&E moving forward, and that PG&E's involvement had been relatively limited to date. And there was a comment from PG&E's representative stating that he thought that since with the filing, that there would be more involvement with PG&E moving forward through this process. That's something that I think we can all hope for. Obviously, they play a pivotal role. And then the meeting ended with just a general discussion on the role of the ad hoc group, the Huffman Ad Hoc group moving forward. And unfortunately, Congressman Huffman had to leave. He had to catch a flight back to DC midstream in this meeting, so he was not there at the end. But his aide, John Driscoll, was taking the lead on that. And it essentially acknowledged that, they expect the ad hoc to continue to play a key role moving forward, and that the discussion as far as, what that role is and the mechanisms will be a key item for the next agenda at a meeting later this summer, early fall. And I don't know, Pam and Jean, Pam or Grant, if you have heard anything recently as far as when a meeting might be scheduled, but I have not heard.
There was a discussion with the facilitator, Congressman Huffman's facilitator for the process last week. There could be a very short meeting as early as late August, but I don't know for sure. So we're actually going to have conversation with that facilitator, Gina, and John Driscoll on Wednesday morning. So that'll be a topic of discussion, because they had put together sort of a proposal of the Huffman's, the ad hoc committee's role and the timing of potential meetings of that group that we looked at, and we need to have a conversation with them about that. So that's happening on Wednesday morning.
Okay, thanks, Pam. Any questions from the TAC on my report? I don't see any hands on that. Let's go to the public. Any comments from the public on this agenda item, which is an update on the May 14th Huffman Ad Hoc virtual committee meeting?
I see no hands raised for this agenda item.
Thank you, Gina. Okay, we're moving to agenda item number 8, Regional Water Supply Resiliency Study. And I did see Don Seymour is available. Don, you want to provide an update?
Yes, good morning, Drew. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Sorry, I was joined a bit tardy today. I had some personal things come up, so I apologize for that. But so regarding the Regional Water Supply Resiliency Study, Jacobs has completed a final draft of the work plan. That was forwarded to you, and I know circulated to the TAC ad hoc members, who are taking the opportunity now to review that. I intend to, I'm hoping on the next ad hoc in August or September, we would have Jacobs join us and go through any issues, questions folks might have on the work plan. And then finally release it for everybody to review as a final document after we've gone through that process. I'm currently preparing an agenda item to go to our board. I'm hoping late August or very early September to receive approval to enter into amend the agreement to start that second phase of work, which would be implementing the work plan, building the decision support model, developing and analyzing a number of scenarios that the TAC ad hoc will develop. And then finally, Jacobs would put together a report documenting those results. So moving forward, and it was great to have Jacobs complete that, get that final draft of the work plan available to our contractors. Any questions?
Thank you, Don. Any questions from the TAC first? I don't see any hands raised. How about any questions from the public on agenda item number 8, Regional Water Supply Resiliency Study Update?
I do not see any hands raised for this item.
Thank you, Gina. We're moving now to agenda item number 9, Emergency Training and Coordination Program Update. And Stephen Hancock with the agency is going to provide this.
Good morning, Drew. Good morning, everybody. Thank you. There's 2 documents in your board packet that's for review. One is the program overview that we sent at the May 18th meeting. What we've added to that is really confirmation of the roster and the membership composition of this proposed committee. The other attachment is the one specific for this meeting, which is the establishment of emergency training sub. There we go. Which is the actual establishment of the committee. We presented to you the ideas. We got some feedback since the May meeting, and now we wanted to bring it back with the membership identified to get formal adoption of the subcommittee. And then really, that's when the work's going to begin. To summarize what we're looking at, this is born out of the grand jury report in 2018-19, which encouraged Sonoma Water to improve coordination with water contractors. There's certainly no shortage of opportunities to coordinate and share information and build some better practices. And this just being another opportunity to share in that, as we've been doing in the current COVID-19 situation. The subcommittee that we're proposing is really focused on 2 areas. One, training, what type of training we can identify, present, build in that can be mutually beneficial across the board for all our agencies. And what are the coordination aspects on top of that we can do as well, looking at things like mutual aid programs, maybe inventory management, or additional ideas that we can bring to the table to kind of increase the effectiveness, the efficiencies, and the readiness of all our agencies. The membership we do have, I want to thank everybody for identifying members. We have almost at least 2 members identified per agency. And once we get approval of this committee, our next steps are to convene the group. We want to identify a chairperson, review and refine the goals, establish the meeting frequency, which is the usual kind of standard fare, but then really develop some short and long-term training and coordination objectives, which we can bring back to the next TAC meeting. The idea is we want to identify some immediate things, but we don't want to do it just for the sake of doing it. We really want to build this with the group at the table. So the priority is bringing the membership together to identify where some immediate needs we can find some gain, and then kind of kick those into gear, and then bring back a little bit more of a strategically thought out short and long-term goals for this committee at the next TAC meeting. That's all I have. Drew, unless you want to add any more?
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, so what I would like to do is between now and the WACTAC meeting in August is to, again, have everybody in the water contractors look at the designated representatives from each of the agencies that are proposed for being this subcommittee. I'd also like to have a discussion on who would be the subcommittee chair within this group, and then come back at the August August 3rd WACTAC meeting with approval of the subcommittee and a designated chair of the subcommittee. So between now and then, you can look forward to some more discussions between ourselves and with Stephen so that we just get this subcommittee kind of finalized, we get a chair identified, and then bring it back for final approval at the August 3rd meeting. Any questions from the TAC on this? Seeing none, any questions from the public on agenda item number 9? Gina?
No hands raised.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move to agenda item number 10. This is me. This is just an update on COVID-19 coordination and communication. I just wanted to take a brief moment to again, if there are folks that aren't aware that the water agency and the water contractors are participating in weekly calls related to how we're dealing at the staff level and also communication with the public on our efforts related to the coronavirus pandemic. These calls are coordinated through the agency, and much appreciate Grant, the staff taking time to coordinate these. A special shout out to Barry Dugan and Stephen Hancock for their commitments and participation each week. Some of the topics that are ongoing agenda items with the calls include developing consistent communication and messaging to the public. And again, it's really important that all the water contractors in the agency, have similar messaging since a lot of our water is coming from the same source, obviously. So that's a regular ongoing topic of discussion. Also discussing how to share information and availability on personal protection equipment, PPEs. Talking on reliance of our vendors in terms of supplying important products such as chemicals that we need to produce safe, good quality water, chlorine, and what have you. Making sure that there aren't any impacts in deliveries, and we haven't seen any, and some other additional topics related to just ensuring our staff are being readdressed as much as possible, their public health and safety as well. So I just wanted to say that I find these calls to be very informative and appreciate all the contractors for participating when they can, and obviously appreciate the agency's efforts. And for those of you that aren't aware, the agency was looking at bringing on an emergency coordinator and talking about that for a while now, and just happened to be able to bring Stephen on board just right before this happened, and it's certainly been a benefit. I know it's been a benefit for the agency, and Stephen, it's been a benefit to the water contractors to have you and on board, and for Barry's continued role as well. So I just want to thank everybody for that. It's important work, and it's important that it continues. Any questions from the TAC on this?
Hey, Drew, this is Fergie with City of Sonoma. Not questions, just wanted to add my thanks to yours. And thank you, Drew, for putting this on the agenda. I also find these calls very helpful. As a small city, there's so much to keep track of with COVID, and being able to check in with all the other water contractors and learn what's working for them, and being able to implement that here, and then sharing the challenges here in Sonoma. It's been just very helpful. And thanks to Barry for doing a great job leading the communication through this.
Thanks,
Hey, Drew, this is Grant. I will be sure to pass this on to Barry, as will Pam. Just want to point out that he's going to have a brief medical leave coming up, and that Ryan Pedrati out of the San Community and Government Affairs Division will be helping to coordinate those calls in his absence. So I do want to thank Barry and be thinking good thoughts for him and all the work that he's done leading up to this, and then also help Ryan carry on in the footsteps without missing a beat. Thanks for the recognition on that. I do think these are very helpful calls.
Absolutely.
All right, Drew, just so you know, Barry is attending. He's on the call right now. He's one of the attendees.
Oh.
Okay, good. Good.
Thanks, Barry. And of course, Grant, just so you know, well, and everybody knows that Barry also was all over him being gone for a little bit and having that coverage all lined up and all us knowing about it. And so he's doing a great job through and through.
Okay, any other comments on this from the TAC before I open it up to the public? Okay, any comments from the public? This is on agenda item number 10, COVID-19 coordination and communication.
Drew, I don't see any members wishing to speak.
Okay, thank you, Gina. Okay, so now agenda items for the next meeting on the WAC and TAC. There will be a water supply coordination council meeting to help prepare the agenda. That is Tuesday, July 22nd or 21st. So I'll be working with the agency and getting out a call-in information on that. I already mentioned that we will have also formal adoption of the subcommittee for the emergency training and coordination program, including subcommittee chair. And then, well, actually I should ask, I guess, besides our regularly occurring items, is there anything in addition that the TAC would like to see before I open it up to public comment for the WAC TAC agenda, August 3rd? Seeing none, we'll open it up for any public comment for agenda items for that meeting. I do see one.
We do. That would be David Keller, and I have unmuted your mic, David.
All right, thank you. I not so much an item, but I just wanted to thank staff, thank Grant, and you guys for having figured out how to have effective public participation in the meetings. This has worked much better than last time around, and I want to thanks for the tech guys who put it together and for you guys for supporting that.
Thanks, David. That's a good opportunity again to take a moment to really recognize all the city of Santa Rosa staff that make all this happen. You know, Jennifer and Gina Perez and Easter Ledesma. I mean, this couldn't happen without all you guys. So it's a good thing you don't have to rely on me. So good job.
Thanks again.
Okay, so appreciate that comment, David. One other, I do have a public comment for future agenda items that came on my voicemail over the weekend. Again, just recall that the public can provide comments in advance of the meeting by sending emails out or calling me and leaving a message on my voicemail. So so Gina, I'm going to try to play this back. Is that the game plan?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to play this message back, and then hopefully you'll be able to hear okay from my phone. So bear with me a minute here.
Item 11, items for next agenda. This is Jeff Friday, Santa Rosa. I want to talk about Summer Moon Rapid Transit. And I'm touching with it. I want you to have a lot of officers that are very surrounded in Northern California Regional Intelligence. Officer of the Security Suspicious to call the Northern California Regional Intelligence Office. It's a branch of the United States Department of Homeland Security. So I noticed that 3 or 4 suspicious graffiti markings on our property, which is, paid for by sales tax. And so I want to encourage people to ride smart. Clipper comes on $200, and that gives you a lot of options. You can go all the way down to Duxford, all the way, or you can go to the terminus, that's the Charles Regional Airport area, which is really, really great. And my compliments to Susan Bourne for doing a good job. I just like to see more people ride the train. So I propose that everybody on the commission, like one person, purchase a Clipper pass to show the support for SMART and how good of a resource it is, because it is really good, and purchase one and ride the SMART train and take some pictures and advertise it and show how good it is as an option, because nobody's on the train. It works great, but nobody likes it. It's like a ride on this train. It reminds me of the Jim Morrison song, Ride on This, SMART. Nobody on the train, but it's such a great thing. And then I want to say one other thing about the future. During the COVID-19 pandemic,
Okay, so he was cut off. I mean, obviously a little off topic from our mission.
True.
Yes?
I don't know about anyone else, but I couldn't really make out what was said. I don't know if you can.
Yeah, I can
that at all.
I can summarize it. So the gentleman's name, and it was kind of blurred even on my phone. I think he was from a cell phone with not good reception. His name was, from what I could detect, Jeff Sadi from Santa Rosa. And basically, in a nutshell, he was encouraging what he called folks on this commission to support SMART because ridership is down and it's important public transportation by buying Clipper cards, and riding the train as much as possible. So again, a little off topic for our mission, but I did want to convey that was a message that came in from the public for the sake of the order there. Okay, any other comments before we exit? All right, seeing none, thanks everyone. And again, we'll be working towards preparation of the WAC and TAC meeting on Monday, August 3rd. And again, that will be a virtual meeting, and I assume that'll be very similar to what we had today in terms of organizational format and video presentation.
Drew, I
Yes,
think
Grant.
you've exposed your ability to run a good Zoom meeting, so we're going to be expecting this of you now. That's the problem of setting the bar so high.
All right, well, I do what I can. I appreciate it. All right, thanks everyone.